among a lot of other things, I'm working on taking care of the heater hose pipes for the car right now. So that it has this large coolant pipe that runs behind the header, exhaust manifold, and goes up the back of the cylinder head, and then would go to the heater hose or the heater core, and then the return from the heater core, or maybe the delivery, the other heater hose would go into the top of the rear of the cylinder head. So the pipe has this little like small port on it that would bypass to the throttle body, I think. But we're not gonna use that. And also the pipe kind of curves like away towards the battery box. So I'm gonna end up just looping them together. Like my brief research shows that on this particular car, the coolant running through the heater core is an important part of the circulation of the system. So rather than plug those, we're gonna loop them. But I don't need the little port on this, and I need this pipe to kind of bend closer to the cylinder head so that it's not taking up any unnecessary space. So what I'm doing is I chopped off this section of the pipe. So it used to be like this, and that was the whole pipe. So I chopped that, and then what I'm doing is, don't mind my safety glasses. I'm welding on a -10 onto here. I'm just gonna TIG weld that real quick. And I thought about trying to weld a -10 onto the cylinder head side, but I'm worried I'm gonna screw that up. Also, by the time it has the bung and then the AN fitting, it's gonna kind of interfere with the connector for my number 6 ignition coil. So in lieu of doing an AN hard line on this, I think I'm going to just use one of these ports right here. It's like a slip-on hose barb onto that pipe, onto the bung I weld on right now, and then I'll just find a hose that's already kind of U-shaped. That's a 5/8 heater hose, and then just run that just from the cylinder head straight down to my pipe. So let's get this thing tigged up. I already chopped it. I cleaned up around the edges here. Hopefully we can get a decent TIG weld and glue this thing up, and that will be one less thing that we have to worry about. All right, folks, so as you can see, the engine is in the house now because it's blazing hot outside. So plugging away at things on the engine, and I have all the manifolds and everything just kind of hanging on it, how they're gonna be positioned, and I'm just kind of chipping away at some little things that need sorting on this thing. I got this little list going. All the little things that need sorting on the engine before it can go into the car. So I got my AN fitting welded onto this pipe, this coolant pipe. So before, this pipe would have like gone and bent way over here to go to the heater core, but I just chopped it right here, welded on a stainless -10, and then this is just a barb fitting. So all I gotta do is go to the parts store and just pick out a 5/8 hose that kind of does a little curve, like a U-turn, and it should plug right in and be good, and everything will be done with that. This had a little coolant bypass that I also chopped off in the process, as I mentioned, and I got another one of those right here that I have to sort out. So I'm gonna have to take this housing off. This is gonna be a steel little nipple that's like pressed in to the housing. Honestly, the easiest thing to do is probably just gonna be to pinch this shut and then just weld it real quick, because that's not gonna be visible and you'll never know that it's there at all. So I gotta still do that. Just kind of a big list of things. I'm gonna have to weld on a flange on top of this for my throttle body, because this is actually, I believe this is the bolt pattern for a stock throttle body for an IS300, and I'm running this 70mm, so this flange came with it, so that's going to be a weld on. I'll probably weld the inside seam if possible, so that way I don't got to worry about it looking like shit. But either way, I got to figure that out one way or another. The lower intake still needs to be painted, but it's otherwise good to go. We're using the stock fuel rail, so I have to weld on a -8 aluminum bung right here. From Drift Motion, I picked up these adapters, and these adapt a 11mm outlet hole to a 14mm inlet, so we'll be able to use our like Bosch style injectors on the stock rail. However, there's still more. The hole on the bottom of the rail for the injectors right here on each hole is 11mm also. So I haven't started to look into this a whole lot yet, but I'm hoping I just get a 9/16 drill bit and wallow these all out, and then the seal will, the top of the injector will fit nice and snug. That's still to be determined, but I'm hoping to stick with the stock fuel rail. That is the plan right now. I am running a power steering and AC delete from Drift Motion also. So for instead of the smooth pulley on the tensioner, we go to a rib pulley. However, it has some clearance problems. It's touching the arm here. Whenever you start to tighten it down, the pulley touches the arm. And I contacted them and they're like, yeah, you might have that. And actually did say in the parts listing that it may be necessary to just kind of slightly clearance this arm a little bit. So I've got to do that still. Let's see, oil return pipe. So with these cheap eBay manifolds, you run into a problem with oil drainage. You can see the oil drain right here, and it just goes straight down into pipes. Like, I don't know if you can see how crappy that is, but like, you couldn't run anything straight there. And to try to run a hose and like snake it through here, you're not gonna have much room around the turbo. It's gonna burn up the hose for sure. I've dealt with this on the Lexus. I tried just snaking a hose through here. I put like heat insulation and stuff around the hose and it still melted. So I'll show you guys what I do to sort out that issue right now. So my solution to the oil drain is this. This is the return that came with the turbo. See, it's off to an angle. I don't know why it's off to an angle like that. This is a universal turbo. It's not meant for this header or this car, but it came with this return with a little angle on it. I don't mind that, actually. That's gonna kind of be advantageous, but this is our parts list that we're gonna fix that with. So this is just this is a 5/8 aluminum tube, and I got a box of these from O'Reilly's for like $8. And it's pretty nice quality aluminum. And what I do is I'm gonna nix the fitting on here. I'll probably go ahead and keep it on there. And but I'm gonna weld this pipe to that. It's already gonna have a bit of an angle coming off the turbo because of this. And then I'll just have to make a couple little angled pie cuts on the pipe to route the pipe down and out and around that runner. And then on the end of the pipe, I will weld on this bung right here. And so what we'll end up with is, you know, something like this, give or take. You can imagine it. It's gonna be glorious. And then I'll just have to make a short section of PTFE-10 hose to go from here down to the pin. And it'll only be, 6 inches long or so. So I welded the pipe on and figured out right away that I should have put an angle on the pipe before I welded it onto the end of this AN. So I really didn't use very much length here, but I went ahead and put about what I'm guessing is probably about a 22 degree cut right there. And we're gonna weld this on there like so. So we can get a nice little turn and try to get up out of that runner. I'm just using my little handheld bandsaw to cut, giving everything a good wire brush, wiping it down with some acetone, and welding it up with the TIG 200. I am in no way a welder. I am not a welder. You're not gonna see any pretty welds come out of me, and I'm generally not gonna give any welding advice because I suck. I hate welding. I wish I was good at it. It could be very rewarding when it goes well, but my objective is to just be able to fabricate parts like this, just to have the ability so that they'll work. And I just don't know that I'll ever actually make good enough welds to ever like profit from them in any way. So I bought the TIG 200, which I got covered up to try to keep the wind turbulence down. But I bought the TIG 200 a while back, and it's paid for itself so many times. Like, there was that heater pipe that I made, there's actually someone online selling something just like this, where they shortened this pipe, welded a fitting on it, and have like a wire, or not have like a tap to put threads inside this pipe, and then a fitting that screws on there, and then an AN hose that connects the two together. Selling it for $250. $250 for to weld a bung onto a pipe, tap threads into this. He sends you the tap, 2 fittings, 1 tap, 1 piece of hose, $250. Like, that's crazy. I made this with a $12 friggin' AN fitting, or AN bung. I already had this thing, honestly, but even if you had to buy it, that's cheap. And didn't spend $250. All right, so I just put a weld down on there. I actually was welded onto the end of the threaded section, but that put me down too low, so I chopped all that off, welded this on at a 45, and I'm gonna get a little test fit here. I'll make that up nice and flush on the bottom of the center housing there. And you can see our pipe comes right out between the compressor and the header at a pretty nice level. So now all I need to do is turn this puppy down and put that other threaded -10 about right here somewhere. And then they'll have a hose that goes from here to here. All right, and that is going to be our final product there for our tube that goes around the header. And I'll show you guys why you go with a dash 10 on the oil return. All that water shooting that hole. That's how fast this thing can flow oil. Now, you don't want any restriction at all whenever you are returning from the turbo. All right, so now we slide this puppy up there. And I'm gonna use my other hand to kind of support it to the turbo. And voila. That is excellent. Not touching either of these. Comes out here where it can be accessed. And all we gotta do now is just make a hose and run the hose. So here we have our alternator pieces after being cleaned up and painted. The cage turned out amazing. I went ahead and cleaned up our stator winding just in the parts washer. It's not perfect. You can still see there's still some crud on it, but for the most part, it's clean to the touch. You know, about as good as within reason. So not too bad. And then the rotor, I didn't really want to get too down and dirty with cleaning these up. I did put them in the parts washer and give them a scrubbing, but it only does so much. This little tin cover that goes on the back, it's like gold on the inside. I decided not to sandblast this. I thought it would give it a really weird finish if I did, because as you can hear, this is like an aluminum, a super thin aluminum alloy of some sort. But it looks okay, so I just gave it a good scrubbing, and I think it turned out okay. And I like that it kind of has a contrast. Let's see if I can get this thing to go on. I actually like that it has a bit of a contrast against the aluminum casting. I feel like it would have looked weird if it was exactly the same color as the casting. So it's a little more natural looking this way. And same thing with I didn't want to paint this thing with the winding and the rotor in there because it would have looked like a mess, to be honest. So anyway, all that's good. I'm going to go ahead and start assembling this. I have the pulley out in the shed, fresh with some black paint, so we got to wait on it before we can fully install this thing on the car. But as you can see, this is going to fit right at home right here, much better than it would have being just a filthy unit. And a brand new, I could have gotten a new one from O'Reilly's for like 130 bucks, which is super reasonable, but I saved 130 bucks. So this is the guy we made the other night. I have all the terminals that I need to start on the power distribution center that will have our relays and fuses. So I think I'm going to start on that tonight. So here's our alternator after spiffing her up. Looks pretty good. It's like a brand new piece. I also got some spark plugs, which you can't really see because the coils are on, but these coils were just sitting here previously. I actually got the spark plugs. Since I have the plugs installed, I can get a measurement from my plate, my 3D printed coil bracket that I made. And I need to get a measurement from here to this threaded hole right here. And once I have that measurement, I will make some like tubes. I'll print some tubes, probably 2 for each one of these. I had to do this in 2 pieces. I don't know if I went into this the other day. I had to do this in 2 pieces because my printer bed is only big enough to do 3. It's not big enough to do like a whole strip. I was hoping to, but I couldn't. So anyway, so then I'll just have to get some really long bolts that'll go down to that threaded hole there and that threaded hole right there and so on. So those will be held in place, but actually like the coils really snap very nicely onto the spark plug. I probably don't even need these for keeping the coils in place, but I think it'll be a nice little added support, and it kind of closes things off on the top, makes it look a little bit nicer. All right, y'all, I'm gonna wrap up the video right here. I have so much more footage and so much more to share with you guys, but I don't wanna make this thing drag on too long. We have a lot more to cover. I've been really working hard and just knocking things out for this build. So you're gonna wanna stay tuned and look out for the next video because there's a lot more coming at you. But until then, like as always, subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you next time.